Hi everyone, welcome to this video on pathogens and transmission at GCSE Biology Chapter 10.1. Today we're going to learn how infections spread, the types of the pathogens, and how to prevent disease. By the end of this video, you'll understand the key definitions and be able to give examples of how pathogens move from one host to another. So let's get started with some key definitions. What is a pathogen? It is a microorganism that causes disease. Transmission, the process by which a pathogen passes from one host to another. A host is an organism that provides a home for the pathogen. An infection happens when a pathogen enters the host and starts to multiply, such as viruses or bacteria. Could be a viral infection or a bacterial infection. A disease is what results when the infection causes symptoms that affect health. The incubation period is the time between the infection and the appearance of symptoms. We have direct transmission, when a pathogen is spread through direct contact, and indirect transmission, when a pathogen is spread through indirect contact, often via air, water, or food. Pathogens. A pathogen is a disease-causing organism. This is the definition that you will have to learn for the IGCSE biology syllabus. This will be asked in the exam for 1 point, since it is a define question. Pathogens are passed on from one host to another, and therefore the diseases they cause are known as transmissible diseases. Pathogens can be passed from one host to another by various ways, such as direct contact, bodily fluids, and indirect contact. So basically, the pathogens can get from person A to person B in a few different ways, and understanding these helps us prevent infections. Let's move on to methods of transmission and the examples of diseases they cause. Droplets in air can cause common cold, influenza, and COVID-19. COVID-19 will be in your IGCSE exam, and you will be asked to provide this example as well as common cold and influenza. Contaminated food or water can cause cholera, typhoid, or dysentery. Touching contaminated surfaces can cause athlete's foot and salmonella. Can be transmitted through flies or unpasteurized raw eggs. Consumption of unpasteurized raw eggs. Insect bites, malaria, and dengue fever. Malaria is usually caused by mosquitoes, so the mosquitoes are the host. Here you can see human pathogen transmission. Contaminated water. Pathogens in water can infect people who drink it. Airborne transmission, tiny droplets in air can spread pathogens when someone sneezes or coughs. Sexual contact or sharing sharp objects. Pathogens can pass from one person to another through intimate contact or used needles. And direct person-to-person contact, such as simple touching, like shaking hands or hugging, can spread infections. We have here the examples of direct and indirect contact. Direct contact happens when you physically touch an infected person or their bodily fluids. Examples include hugging, kissing, or touching a wound. Indirect contact happens when a pathogen is passed via an object or surface, like a doorknob, shared towel, or even a mosquito that acts as a vector. Blood transfusion is also included in indirect contact. And on the IGCSE exam, if you get a question, is blood transfusion direct or indirect, the answer would be indirect contact. This is really important. Here you can see some pathogen transmission examples. Saliva, touching, and bodily fluids are all direct contact. Indirect contact include air, contaminated objects, and animals carrying the disease. Indirect doesn't always mean a person. You can get infected from touching something contaminated as well. Sexual and sharp object transmission. can cause HPV, HIV, or herpes. Some pathogens are passed through sexual contact or sharing sharp objects like needles. This is another form of direct transmission, and it's important to understand because it's preventable with safe practices. Never touch a used needle. We move on to our multiple choice questions. Question 1. You can pause the video and answer the question in your own time, while I will be moving on with the answers after each question. Which of the following is an example of direct contact transmission? Touching a doorknob that an infected person used, kissing an infected person, using a contaminated medical instrument, being bitten by a mosquito. The answer is B, kissing an infected person, since all of the other answers are examples of indirect contact and not direct contact as asked in the question. Indirect contact transmission occurs when pathogens are transmitted directly from one person to another. Pathogens are transmitted through an intermediate object or vector. A person sneezes on another person. People share a meal. The answer here is B. Pathogens are transmitted through an intermediate object or vector, since an intermediate object indicates indirect contact as it is asked in our question. Question 3. Which of the following is an example of indirect contact transmission? Splash of infected material onto your eyes, shaking hands with an infected person, touching a contaminated surface when touching your face, hugging an infected person. The answer is C, touching a contaminated surface when touching your face. All of the other examples are examples of direct contact and not indirect contact. Question 4. Direct contact transmission involves an intermediate object, vectors like mosquitoes, physical contact between a person and a pathogen source, airborne particles only. The answer is C as well, physical contact between a person and a pathogen source, since all of the other examples are examples of indirect contact transmission. Question 5, which is the last question. Which of the following would not be considered indirect contact transmission? Using contaminated lab equipment, touching contaminated clothing, kissing an infected person, touching a contaminated doorknob. The answer is C, kissing an infected person would not be considered indirect contact transmission, since this is an example of direct contact transmission. To summarize, pathogens are organisms that cause disease. They spread through direct or indirect contact, bodily fluids, and airborne routes. Understanding how pathogens are transmitted helps us prevent infections through hygiene, safe practices, and awareness. Thanks for watching. Make sure to review your notes and think about examples of pathogen transmission in your daily life. In the next video, we will move on to 10.2 of the IGCSE syllabus.